Why does your dog spin in circles before lying down on a perfectly flat floor? Not a quirk, not confusion. Every breed, Chihuahua to Great Dane, performs some version of this ritual. The behavior is inherited, not learned. An inherited instinct is a behavior encoded in DNA, present at birth, requiring no teacher. Dogs don't observe another dog circling and decide to copy it. The instruction arrives pre-installed, written before the puppy opens its eyes. To understand why the spin exists, you have to leave the kitchen entirely. Picture the grasslands and shrublands of Eurasia, roughly 15,000 years ago. Tall, dense, unmanaged vegetation covering the ground where wild canids slept. The ground out there was never flat. Stones, roots, thorns, and insects hid inside every clump of grass. Before lying down, a wild canid had to solve a real physical problem: make the surface safe and comfortable in under a minute. Circling was the solution. Each rotation bent and flattened the grass beneath the animal's paws, carving a shallow bowl, a custom-fitted depression that displaced rocks, expelled insects, and gave the body even support. The more rotations, the more thorough the clearance. One spin was often not enough. 2 or 3 passes produced a measurably more stable, debris-free surface. But flattening the ground was only part of the function. The direction of the circle and the season mattered too. Most people never realize this spin was also a thermostat. A 2013 study published in Frontiers in Zoology, led by Vlastimil Hart at Czech University of Life Sciences, found that dogs preferentially align their bodies along the Earth's north-south magnetic axis when conditions are calm. Temperature and wind shift that preference. The circle is how the animal samples all compass directions before committing to one. Each rotation gives the dog a full sweep of wind, scent, and temperature. The spin isn't random. It's a sensor pass, a systematic environmental scan that ends only when the nervous system registers a satisfactory orientation and signals the body to stop. Now add another layer. Wild canids didn't sleep in safe enclosures. Every sleeping site was a potential ambush point. The spin served a second survival function that had nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with whether the animal woke up at all. While circling, the animal's head sweeps a full 360 degrees. Every rotation is a threat assessment. The dog checks for movement, registers scent from all directions, and confirms no predator has approached since it last looked. The paws carry scent glands. Every step in the circle deposits a chemical signature on the ground. The sleeping site becomes marked territory, a message to other animals that this space is claimed, readable long after the dog has moved on. Here's the counterintuitive part. 15,000 years of living beside humans, sleeping on beds, rugs, and kitchen tiles, hasn't erased a single rotation. The behavior is completely intact. Domestication softened the wolf. Behavioral geneticists call this a fixed action pattern, a motor sequence so deeply embedded in the nervous system that it runs to completion once triggered, regardless of whether the environment still requires it. The key word is completion. The sequence doesn't pause mid-rotation to check whether the grass is actually there. It simply runs. Natural selection removes traits that cost energy and produce no benefit. The spin costs almost nothing, a few seconds, a few calories. There was never enough selective pressure to eliminate it. Neutral behaviors persist. This one has ridden along for millennia. But not every dog circles the same way. Some spin twice, some spin 7 or 8 times, some barely complete a half rotation. What drives that variation, and does it tell us anything meaningful about the individual animal's internal state, rather than just its habits? Research by animal behaviorist Karen Overall, whose 2013 textbook, Manual of Clinical Behavioral Medicine for Dogs and Cats, remains a standard clinical reference, documents that dogs with higher baseline anxiety tend to circle more times before settling. The spin isn't just physical preparation, it's also self-soothing. The repetitive motion appears to lower arousal before sleep. The circling belongs to a broader family of nesting behaviors identified by ethologist Mark Bekoff, whose comparative work on canine motor patterns established that dogs also scratch and paw at bedding before lying down. Another inherited action from wild ancestors shaping vegetation into a nest. Bekoff's framework treats the spin and the scratch as expressions of the same ancestral program: site preparation before vulnerability. Consider a Siberian husky living in a 4th-floor apartment in Helsinki. No grass, no predators, climate-controlled air, and yet every single night that dog completes 3 to 4 full rotations on a memory foam mat before lying down. The husky isn't confused. Its nervous system received the same trigger signal every ancestor received at dusk: a drop in light, a rise in tiredness. And the ancient program launched exactly as written. The apartment is irrelevant to the genome. Here's a question worth sitting with. If your dog circles on your kitchen floor, it's running a program designed for a world that no longer exists. What does it mean to share your home with an animal carrying that kind of depth? The spin isn't alone. Dogs also perform a greeting bow, chest lowered, hindquarters raised, that ethologists have traced directly to wolf play solicitation signals documented in wild packs. That bow has survived domestication just as intact as the spin. Both behaviors are running in your living room tonight, drawn from the same ancient source code. This matters practically. The American College of Veterinary Behaviorists recommends giving dogs bedding deep enough to scratch and circle freely. Denying the ritual doesn't delete the drive. It leaves the animal unable to complete a program its nervous system insists on running. Once you understand the spin, you start reading other behaviors differently. The way a dog sniffs a corner before lying there. The way it faces the door when it finally settles. These aren't random choices. They're the same ancient checklist, running in sequence. Domestication reshaped the dog's body dramatically. Skull shape, coat color, ear position, size. But the behavioral core resisted. The spin is evidence that some ancient programs run too deep for 10,000 years of selective breeding to touch. That raises a harder question. If domestication couldn't erase the sleep spin, what other ancient programs are still running inside the animal asleep at your feet? Programs we haven't yet thought to look for. Researchers at the Ethology Department of Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, the same institution behind landmark dog cognition studies since the 1990s, are now mapping the full catalog of inherited canine motor patterns to identify which ones remain functionally active. Their work, presented at the 2022 International Society for Applied Ethology Congress, and not yet published as a peer-reviewed paper at the time of this script, suggests the spin isn't exceptional. It's typical. Dozens of inherited motor sequences appear to have survived domestication largely intact, most of them invisible to owners because they blend seamlessly into what looks like ordinary daily behavior. Go back to that kitchen floor, the dog spinning in circles before lying down. You see it differently now. That's not a quirky habit. That's 15,000 years of survival intelligence executing on linoleum. Ancient, precise, and completely automatic. One variation warrants attention. A dog that circles compulsively, 10, 15, 20 rotations unable to settle, isn't displaying an amplified version of the normal ritual. Veterinary neurologists flag compulsive circling as a potential symptom of cognitive dysfunction syndrome, a condition affecting roughly 50% of dogs over 11 years old. If the spin stops resolving into rest, that's a signal worth bringing to a vet. Tonight, when your dog starts circling, count the rotations. Notice the final direction it faces. Watch whether it scratches before it settles. You're not watching a habit. You're watching an ancient program run, and now you know exactly what it's doing. Here's what to do with that. Give your dog a bed large enough to complete a full circle without hitting an edge. Let it scratch the surface before settling. And if the circling ever becomes compulsive and unresolvable, consult a veterinary behaviorist, because the spin that has run for 15,000 years should still be ending in rest.